Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a Boeing 737 pilot, and on this video let's talk about how much weight we typically carry in the 737 and what zero fuel weights are realistic then. We need to distinguish between three different types of operation. We've got low-cost operation, where bags cost extra and where passengers therefore try to carry as little as possible. Then we've got the, let's say, normal non-low-cost operation, where bags are typically included, but where still many people don't carry one. And finally, we've got the holiday and the charter operations, where typically everybody carries a heavy bag. So let's look at the different examples. We'll start off assuming that the airlines we are flying for have some good booking numbers in the region between 90% or something the likes. So let's have a look into SimBrief then, what a typical weight profile here may look like for a flight like that. We've got a 737-800 up here, and we've selected 185 passengers planned, as well as a little bit of carry-on luggage for the low-cost passengers. Now, if we have a very quick look into my airframe assignment over here, then I have created the default baggage weight at 0 kilograms. The reason I've done this is because, except for the holiday flight, basically passengers don't typically carry a suitcase. So that's a huge difference there when considering real life versus SimBrief or even PFPX. They by default want to load like 23 kilos of bags for each passenger, which at 185 passengers is some 3 tons of extra weight that in real life you typically would not see on board. So with the operation that we have planned over here, and note that this is only the planning, this is not what is actually loaded in the plane, but with what is planned over here, 185 passengers and a couple of bags, we end up at an estimated zero fuel weight of 58.6 tons. However, now let's look at the reality, because especially in low-cost operation, by far not everybody who's got a boarding pass is actually going to show up. So this is a load instruction document that Virtual Performance Tool has generated for me based on the above SimBrief flight plan. And as you can see, we have 164 adults, 11 children, 2 infants. And this adds up to a total on board of 175 passengers versus 185 planned. So let's take this weight and go to the FMC and enter it. So we've got 175 passengers, and we said we have 600 kilograms of bags in the front. This gives us a zero fuel weight of 57.9. In other words, we are missing a good couple of kilograms compared to the zero fuel weight that we had in the OFP. And that is actually something totally realistic. In real life, we barely ever meet the zero fuel weight of the OFP, let alone being above that. I think I've been above that by like 100 kilos, maybe 2 times in my career. Usually we are always a ton or 2 below the zero fuel weight that was planned in the operational flight plan, because many passengers just don't show up for the flight. We are typically in the region between 10 to 20, sometimes even 25 passengers that don't show up. So it can be often seen that your zero fuel weight is actually like 2,000 kilograms lower than the estimated zero fuel weight from the operational flight plan. Typical zero fuel weights on the flight plan are in the region between 57.5 and 58.5 tons. And even with the plane fully booked, we typically don't get more than 59.5 tons on the zero fuel weight. And the actual weights are then somewhere in the region between 56 to 58 tons. That is what you typically get on most flights in the operation I do. Okay, so let's set this empty once again, and let's have a look at some of the, let's call it, not so low-cost operation. And if we look at that, we basically need to plan with a little less passengers, because the load factors in those airlines are typically somewhere in the region of about 70%. So if we take let's say, a good number of seats, 180 of the plane, and multiply that by 0.7, then we get somewhere in the region of 130 passengers-ish booked. Now, that is more like what they actually have on board, not the bookings. The bookings will be a little bit higher, make that something in the region of about 150 or 160 or so. And the reason why there is such a difference, once again, in the non-low-cost operation is because many companies just book tickets for their staff and they might just not use it in the end. So if we take something in the region around 160 bookings or so with a plane that has 180 seats, then the real number of people on board is going to be a little bit less. Then you can see that we already end up with a little bit less zero fuel weight. There is a difference, however, in terms of the cargo, in that legacy carriers often carry cargo as well. However, don't overestimate the actual weight of those cargoes. So, for example, you might be carrying a bag of mail there, which weighs maybe 50 kilograms. So that is not all that much. Also, holiday makers don't typically carry, non-holiday makers, as in business people, don't typically carry too much of luggage. So if you only load something like 20 or 30 bags on a flight like that, weighing 13 kilograms each, you end up somewhere in the region around 500 kilos of cargo or so. And then you add the mail to that, you're once again in the region around 600 kilos or so, which is something that you can realistically expect there. Of course, that's going to be a little bit different per airline, but that's roughly, once again, similar numbers. So let's have a look at what a possible zero fuel weight may look like then. Let's say we've got, let's be positive here, we've got 150 passengers on board, then once again 600 kilograms of cargo, so we're in the region 55.8 as a zero fuel weight over here. If the airplane is fitted with a first class, then the weights will be even lower, because you will probably have less passengers in the economy, but more in the first class. However, in total, the number of passengers you lose in the economy is going to be more than what you have in the first class. However, they pay so much more money that for the airline it's still worth it, so then your zero fuel weight might even be a little bit lower. Now comes the holiday flights, and holiday flights are typically very well booked, especially when you're flying holiday operators like TUI or Condor and the likes. Then you will typically find that the majority of seats in the plane is booked and actually taken. So holiday makers typically all show up for their flights. There will be a couple who are going to miss it all the time. However, make that maybe only 5 to 10 passengers that will be missing for whatever reason. In other words, we can load up a good 180 passengers in those flights who are actually going to be on board, provided we have 184 or even 189 seats in that plane. So that puts the zero fuel weight up high. Now, let's have a look at the bags. Typically, most of them, except for the children, are carrying bags. If you take a children ratio of maybe 20%, then maybe half of them are going to have bags, so 10% of the passengers won't. In other words, if we take 180 over here and we subtract like 18, then we're at 161 passengers, and the typical bag weight is in the region of around 13 kilograms. I know that many holiday airlines allow 20 to 23 kilograms per bag. However, the reality is that if you take a typical suitcase, you stuff it up, it's going to be in the region of around 13 kilograms. So if you do that, we end up at like 2,100 kilograms for our 161 passengers. So let's take 2,100 into the hold over here, and then maybe take a little bit more, because some people will have special equipment, and there's always the ladies carrying a little bit more in their suitcases. So let's take another, make that maybe 600 kilograms that we're going to add. So we end up with a zero fuel weight in the region just above 61 tons. Alright, that much about the holiday flights, and that much about how to make up your payload for those. As you can see, even in that very heavy loading configuration, we end up somewhere in the region 60.5 to 61 tons. However, even that is still a lot less than what most flight planning tools would usually estimate, and therefore what most flight simmers would usually fly at. Let's take a look at one more configuration, and that is those ethnic flights For example, Germany to Turkey is a very popular flight there, where people are not only going to carry their own suitcases, but they're actually going to carry more stuff that they want to bring along to their family and so on. And for that we can actually assume something in the region of about 20 kilograms per bag, and probably less children as well. So only for these kind of flights, let's take the actual number of passengers as in 180, and we are going to multiply that with 20 kilograms per bag, giving us 3,600 kilograms. So if we keep the 2,100 in the front hold, you're typically not going to be able to stuff in any more than that. We add 1,500 in the aft hold, and that gives us a zero fuel weight in the region up to 62 tons. And more than that is actually not really realistic, even for the most heavily loaded flights, because keep in mind the maximum landing weight of the plane, depending on the certification in my airlines, it's 65,317. So with a zero fuel weight of 62 tons, we would already be significantly limited on the fuel amount we could carry, which then of course would turn over into offloading some cargo. Or some other airlines have certified their planes up to 66 tons max landing weight, and even a tiny bit more. So that way around, you are really in the region of don't take any more than this. So the overall message I want to bring over here is that the default weights that most flight planners like SimBrief or PFPX, etc. bring you are quite a bit too high, and therefore if you're looking at something realistic, then take a zero fuel weight that's anywhere between 56 and 58 tons, and that is what I would say we fly with in 95% of all our flights. Alright, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you found this one interesting, and if you did, then I'm looking forward to see your commentary on this video. I would like to thank you very much, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so using the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below, or by becoming a channel member, which is going to give you exclusive early access to new videos, and in first class membership even the ability to request your own videos. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to welcome you all again very soon.